Good morning, everybody. How are you doing? I see Mr. StreamYard. I see Angel. I see Renee. Good morning to everybody. Hope everybody is well. I think I was supposed to do this at noon Eastern, but it's noon and 5 minutes. The reason why I did this originally, the reason why I set it up is because yesterday I promised to do 2 jokes at the end, and someone reminded me I forgot to do the 2 jokes at the end. So originally, I was just going to do the 2 jokes at the end, and then a couple ideas came up, and then somebody sent me an email, and so I figured, why not? Let's do it, and we'll do it. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, these were supposed to be the end jokes yesterday. This is obviously not legal advice. Like, subscribe, share, whatever you want to do with it. Hello, Lee, and hello, Jason, by the way. Sorry for any confusion about the time. And hello out there to anybody out there in the world, wherever you are. Hope everybody is well. Hello, M. Casey, Lee, whoever else I mentioned. So let me finish off first before I start off with the closing jokes of yesterday, which is the purpose of this entire live stream. Hello, Romero. How do you pronounce that? I've never seen a Ramiro. It's interesting. Toe cramp, Romario, I believe, and Topo Chico. Interesting. I like these names. Anyway, so here's the 3 jokes that I didn't get to tell yesterday. No repeat jokes, of course. These are not repeat jokes as far as I could tell, but we will see. You can be the judge of it. So, so there's there's a very drunk guy in a bar. He sits next to this other guy, and he screams out loudly that all lawyers are thieves. The guy next to him says, "Come on, hold on, buddy. Come on, watch yourself there." The drunk says to the guy and says, "Are you a lawyer?" And the sober guy turns to the drunk guy and says, "No, I'm a thief." So follow that one. Okay. And last, or second to the last, the man who fell into the combine harvester, that's a farming machine if you don't know it, while trying to steal its contents, has been bailed out. And last but not least, 2 wrongs do not make a Reichman. Now, let's go on to the reason I actually was, besides those, I wanted to deal with a couple things, and then a couple things popped up. So yesterday I talked about, I was reading stuff that I received from counsel for the receiver, and he didn't seem to understand, or at least was not clear about the issue of delisting versus stock trading. So I tried to follow up with that, and I'll give you the update results of the follow-up. And the second part was, he kind of referenced that he thought all the bad-mouthing of the receiver was intimidation, or was designed to intimidate. I don't know where that kind of pissed me off, to be honest, because that's just a BS defense. That means that any criticism of the receiver is now going to be called as intimidation. The reason why, and I'm going to speak for myself, the reason why people are pissed at the receiver is because we don't hear any information, and there's a blackout on information. And I saw this morning, somebody sent me an email. Again, it wasn't directed to me, but sent me an email. And in the email, the attorneys for the receiver, specifically this, differentiated the way they would do it as opposed to the way the receiver did it. They said, as a litigator, they would respond to anything they thought was ridiculous, and they would call out the comments. But that's not what the receiver does, and that's what we get. So we get an absence of information. So that's what causes people to call out and be concerned about the receiver, is because we don't know what's going on. Not because we're trying to intimidate the receiver to do anything. Maybe there's people trying to intimidate it, but most people, I think, are just frustrated the receiver hasn't been upfront and direct and transparent. No more than that. So the intimidation, I think, is bullshit. And again, I think that's the use of that term, I think, is designed to intimidate. In other words, I think the counsel for the receiver, by saying that criticism of the receiver is only intended to intimidate, is intending to intimidate shareholders to shut up. And so, that being the case, then I'm certainly not going to shut up. And if you have real concerns about not hearing for the receiver or what he does, then you could certainly speak them up. It's not designed to intimidate the receiver. It's designed to communicate the receiver. And again, if he had been transparent, and we get another issue here that I'll discuss, but if he had been transparent, then we would not be in this point. So after I thought about that, and then I sent an email today, because somebody sent me an email yesterday and said, maybe the attorney for the receiver, and again, the receiver theoretically has two sets of attorneys. One are doing the litigation in Las Vegas, and one apparently is a securities lawyer in Texas, I believe. I tried reaching out to him a couple times, maybe more, and he blew me off. So I've never had any substantive conversation. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what his design is. I don't know who he's working with. I don't know what he's hired for. But anyway, so today, this morning so this would have been 10:46 Eastern, 7:46 a.m. Pacific, I sent an email to Dylan and the group, and including Strickland and others. By the way, not calling for so I was just clarifying that yesterday when I said about the stock not trading, that I wasn't calling for a delisting, and that was the response, which didn't make any sense to me, because I wasn't calling for a delisting. I was calling for a stock, the trading of the stock to stop. That's not delisting, which kind of caused me concern, by the way, that it was so misinterpreted, but because I'm no securities lawyer, but I thought that was clear. But anyway, be that as it may, I said, by the way, not calling for a voluntary delisting, as I said, calling for a trading halt. So that was the response that I sent out. And in reply, this morning, it doesn't happen a lot, and that's the reason why I'm reading it, is I got even though I was directing it at counsel for the receiver, Mr. Strickland, the receiver, responded. And this is what his response was. So I sent out my short question at 7:46. He responded 20 minutes later. So I'm asking just about delisting. So he doesn't respond to any other questions. I asked numerous questions about audits, a plethora of other questions. He doesn't state what he's asking me. So it just kind of, he just kind of throws it out. But I appreciate that he's at least responding, so that's good. Any communication is good communication. We'll accept it, and then we'll evaluate what the communication is. So I'm happy he did, but I wish he kind of would have made it in a way that would be more understandable. But let's go through it. He says, So I think he's referring to the stopping at trading. Now I don't know why he's asking me this a year after he's been already as a receiver. This might have been a question that had been more appropriate, maybe October of 2024, but September 26th of 2025, he's asking me this question about stopping the trading. Walk us through that if you could. What would you hypothetically do? I'm just reading what his questions are to me in response to my one sentence. What would you hypothetically do to achieve that? What specifically would you do? What regulatory or self-regulatory agency would you contact to achieve this? What documents would you file, or whom would you petition to achieve this? And once achieved, how would you then get the company back to fully trading again? What specific documents would need to be filed to achieve that goal? What level of surety could you provide to shareholders that once halted, again, using the term halted, and I'm not asking for, I'm actually halting for a stoppage. Halting, I guess I can't be too critical. Trading would resume again. Do you have any experience in solving these problems? Now, again, I'm not a securities lawyer. The fact that he's asking me these questions a year after the fact, when this should have been done 9 months ago, 6 months ago, 3 months ago, 2 months ago, 1 month ago. So why he's asking me, I don't know. I've been clear. I'm not a securities lawyer, but I would think that you'd hire somebody to do that. So But I got that at 8:06, and right before I came on, I responded. So I responded about 40 minutes after I got Mr. Strickland's email, and my response is as follows. So this was sent out about 27 minutes ago, so it's very timely. And it's sent out to, I responded to Mr. Strickland, and I responded to counsel who are on there also, and everybody else. Good morning. I'm not a securities lawyer, so this is my response to him asking me, well, what would you do a year after the fact, after nothing's been accomplished and after I haven't disclosed if it's not possible? That was my adding in there. Good morning. I'm not a securities lawyer, so the first thing would be to hire a securities lawyer expert with experience dealing with the OTC and with delisted stocks. I believe you hired a securities lawyer in Texas. I tried him a couple of times to no response. So that is the person who should be leading that charge. If the securities specialist who you hire does not know how to deal with a company in the instant situation, I would hire someone who does. Kind of disconcerting that a year after the receivership was set up, that now you are asking me these questions. If I did not or could not hire a securities lawyer, then I would contact the OTC and transfer agent and see if they would voluntarily stop trading temporarily per a stipulation. I would do the same with the transfer agent. If they agree, the problem would be solved in the US. If they did not agree, I would go to court in Nevada and seek an order directing the OTC and the transfer agent to cease trading GTII. After getting a stipulation of order, I would then go to the Canadian SEC equivalent and show the stipulation and or order and see if they will voluntarily cease the trading. If after exploring, and then perhaps with the SEC, if you cannot limit the trading, disclose the fact. That is my off-the-top suggestion, Richard. So that's my response. I have to give credit for the receiver to having responded. I quickly responded. Again, I'm not a securities lawyer, but it didn't seem like complicated, like the simple steps that you would do, even if you weren't a securities lawyer. And if it didn't work, tell us. Don't keep that stuff private. If you can't stop the trading of the stock, then disclose that, because that's something that we should all know if we can't trade it. That would be fair. So that's my response. And I don't know what you've done as to any of these. Perhaps you've done them all, but you haven't disclosed it to us. So whose fault is that for that we are in the dark? So you asked me a question. I've given you a response. Perhaps you should, if you haven't followed through on these suggestions, perhaps you should. And if they don't work out, let us know they don't work out. And if they do work out, let us know they do work out. It's not that complicated. Finally, I got an email from someone today, and they had a prior communication with Dylan Siciliano. And in the response, he kind of sets forth, and it kind of confirms what I had mentioned. He differentiates between what the goals of a receivership are and what the goals maybe of the shareholders. Kind of implies that whether it trades or not is not the issue of the receivership. So my concerns that I expressed before, that the receiver and the receivership don't have the interests of the shareholders at heart, I think was kind of confirmed by the Receivers Council, that their interests are different. And he was saying it in terms of some shareholders might be expecting money out of the receivership or something, or some liquidation event. And he said that's not the purpose of the receivership, which I agree. It's the purpose is to kind of set this up so we can get it trading again. He doesn't seem to indicate anywhere in there that trading is a portion of his obligation or goal. That's the difference between the receivership and counsel and the shareholders. The receivership and the entire purpose of us being here is that this thing can trade again so that we can exit if we want or stay if we want. Just dicking around with a receivership doesn't do us any good. The other part, and dicking is a legal term, by the way. And the last part is, I want to reference that he said, and I'm just going to read the paragraph because I found it interesting. and maybe it gives us some insight as to what's delaying the audit, perhaps, but it creates more uncertainty to me. But I'll read the paragraph. And this is something apparently coming from Dylan Siciliano to a shareholder. It's not to me. On the audit, again, we'll have to disagree. And I think the point was it's taken a long time. I don't know your background, but this is a unique audit situation. I don't know if it's unique, where there's been all kinds of accounting issues in a company that's existed. It's not like the company did tons of business. So I don't think it's like having to go through all the revenue and the profits, et cetera. I don't think this is the most complicated auditing situation. And perhaps if you had chosen a larger auditing firm with better capabilities, which I don't think you did, I'm not certain, but I haven't heard anything. We haven't chosen one of the big accounting firms. Perhaps if you had chosen one of those, we would be farther along. And I know you indicate that, anything could have happened. We could have chosen a different path and maybe different things would have gone on, but we don't really know. But certainly choosing a competent auditing firm might have expedited things, might have been more expensive, but it might have saved all of us more money. And we don't know. You haven't given us any further update about the audit. But anyway, so I'm going to start it again because I babbled. So on the audit, again, we'll have to disagree. I don't know your background, but this is a unique audit situation. Not only were prior audits unceremoniously blacklisted, I have no idea what that means. What does that mean, that audits were blacklisted? And I guess I would think that you probably need to and I'm going to send out an email when I get off today asking for clarity on this. Who blacklisted the audits? Is it an accounting firm or is it management? If it's an accounting firm and it's not Borgers, what action has management taken to go after it? If it's management, then what action have you taken to reconcile that? And if, in fact, this is a unique situation, let me continue on because then I'll head to the end. But prior reporting by the company appears inaccurate, to say the least. We're not talking about 1 or 2 years, but potentially decades. An audit is a professional certification, and as such, every audit is different. I think everyone expected or anticipated it be done sooner, especially the receiver who kind of made that representation from the very beginning. So they're basically saying that the books are completely bullshit nonsense. That's my interpretation. And they're making deals on the side with people, apparently paying monies or discussing share transactions, even though they say the books are in complete shambles and it goes back in decades. So how do you justify doing that and saying this, that you have basically no idea what the finances of the company are, but notwithstanding that, you're going to make deals with those people? Makes zero sense. Zero. So that's why I get pissed off when I deal with these people, because they think I am attacking them to harm the receiver or the interests of shareholders, and it is 100% the opposite. We are just trying to get you to be transparent. As Mr. Siciliano says, if had the choice, I think he intimates in here, and let me see if I can find the spot. Well, I'm not going to find it, but he intimates that, he's a litigator, and if it was his choice, he would just address ridiculous statements as they come up. But he's not his choice, and the receiver takes a different tact. And unfortunately, the receiver's tact, I think, has been wrong. Maybe there's a reason, a rationale, but of course, that hasn't been disclosed. But the receiver's tact is all it has done is create a bunch of uncertainty. And we don't believe that the receiver has the intention of the shareholders at heart. That's just the bottom line. Maybe he does, but he hasn't communicated it to shareholders. And again, I welcome if the shareholders, council, whoever wants to come on my live stream and speak their piece with their counsel. So you'll have somebody who's watching over what you say. If you want to come and just like correct the record, fix things, clarify, confront, argue about whatever, you're welcome. And I'd make the same, if Dylan wants to come on and explain what's going on and the issues with while protecting whatever he needs to protect, I'm happy to do that too. If the securities lawyer, whoever it is in Texas, wants to explain why he hasn't figured out how to stop the trading of GTII or has not, then I welcome them too. Just as we'll ask tough questions, but we'll be fair, just as we've done to everybody. JR and I've done that. We've done that before. If they elect not to do that, then just creates more questions, and the failure to provide reporting then creates a lack of transparency. And as I indicated yesterday in the live stream, we don't need 25, 40-page reports. We just need a 2-page update. Give us a 2-page update of what happened since the last time. That's all. We don't need like a recap of 40 pages and wasting money and time. Okay. So that was the purpose. The purpose of this stupid thing was to tell my jokes. Then I got a couple of emails, and then I got the response from the receiver, and then I gave him an answer to his response. And I'm concerned that he's asking me a year after the fact, but so be it. Better late than never. And I also expressed my dissatisfaction with anybody who, and I don't know who he's referring to. Certainly can't be me, but I don't know who he's referring to that some people are trying to intimidate the receiver. That's just complete nonsense. So at least as far as I'm concerned, it's complete nonsense, but whatever. And I discussed the delisting issue. I don't want delisting, and they apparently confused, and they need to hire somebody who has an expertise in, and I just told them, they need to hire somebody with an expertise in getting this, be able to stop trading and then be able to get it to start trading. And I think those two mechanisms can be done by the same counsel, and it could be done if it requires a court order. So one of the ideas I suggested was go into court, get an order stopping the trading over at the OTC, let the OTC participate. They'll either object or they'll agree. And then once you've got it trading, once you've finished everything you need to do, have an audit completed, a transaction done, and that can trade again, then go back into court and get the order lifted. This is not complicated high science. So, and again, I don't know what you've done with regard to stopping the trading, because as far as I recall, in your 4 reports, at least one of which was prepared by your counsel, not by you, I don't recall seeing anything referencing any attempt to get this stop trading, other than freezing the shares of the disputed shareholders, but nothing about anybody else being able to trade it, nothing about shorts being able to trade it to cover, nothing, zero. So I look forward to hearing about that. And again, if you hire somebody new, that would be interesting information. And if they say we can't do this, that would be interesting information. The problem is the lack of information. And again, that's all we seek is clarity, as we've sought all along. So that was my quick update from yesterday, because I got new stuff, and we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll get a response from the receiver to the email that I sent this morning about 30 minutes ago. And we'll update you again when we have kind of hopefully a bunch of emails that we can talk about. To everybody else, have a great day. Have a great weekend. Let me take a quick look if anybody has any questions. Somebody's asking me if they get to stop and start, where does that put us in the exchange? I have no idea. I think the idea would be to get it uplisted. So if it was in the expert market, if you stayed in the OTC, you'd want to get it up to pink sheet level. I think there's 4 levels on the OTC. So if you can get it above pink sheet level, that's better, because that opens you up to more, more liquidity from various sources. It may be the case, though, that the company or whoever does the transaction wants to pull it completely out of the OTC and into NASDAQ or some other platform. So that's the answer. So I don't know where it would go. It would go up. It either go up in level at the OTC or go to another platform. I think that's the intention. And that would require, again, we need the audit. That's why I keep on harping about the audit. Nothing can happen without a final audit. and certainly no transaction can happen without a final audit. And I don't think any settlement, unless it's a complete. So if I have like 5 million shares and I agree to give you 5 million shares for a release, that's okay. If it's anything else, I think without the final audit, I think everything is premature. And that's why I've been bitching about getting the audit done. And that's why that's why we all needed to get it done. So that's it. That's all I have. Nothing else to add. And be well, take care, have a great weekend. Maybe you'll see me, maybe not. And we'll talk to you later. Thanks for everybody.